475, 500-ish. And we have 6 color teams. So there's 6 different teams, 6 different teachers for every senior class. And there's 6 different teachers for every junior class, and so on and so forth. So if you're following me, that means we have 6 different color teams, and a color team has a senior, junior, sophomore, and freshman class that belong to that color. The bigger schools who have come to visit us have decided that instead of developing 12 or 14 different color teams, they have 6 or 7 color teams, but they have 2 seniors, 2 juniors, 2 sophomores, and 2 freshmen in each color team. If that's confusing, I'm going to come back to it a little bit, but just to get in your head, we're trying to do in the first steps determining how many students are going to be in each advisory class, so you know how many students are in each advisory class, and then you can say what number works best for the seniors, sophomores, juniors, and freshmen, so that every grade level has the same number of advisories. It's hard because freshman classes are going to be bigger. We lose our students, by some of them, by the time we get to senior year. So you're always going to have freshman classes that are bigger and senior classes that are smaller, but you still want the same number of color teams or the same number of advisory classes in each grade level, because that's what makes the competition and the fun we were just talking about work in our model, which might not be the best model for everybody, but it's been successful where we are. And then also the first step, we developed a leadership team and a curriculum team and a student team. So this is actually a good year to take some time and see who are going to be the leaders of this advisory program. Let's get together, let's start having virtual or in-person meetings once a month and discuss this presentation, look over some other curriculum, there's some books. I'll be sharing a document with each of you about a guide for developing advisory. At the end of that, there's some resources for books that you can read that are really helpful and articles. So starting to get a leadership team to coalesce, come together once a month or so and just discuss a few ideas. The curriculum team can be the leadership team, but what I found was I had a lot of teachers who were coming to me with, I have so many ideas for this, great, emailed them to me. But then I have certain teachers who were coming in with a lot of curriculum ideas and ideas for lessons. And once I found 4 teachers or so who were consistently bringing me ideas for lessons, I said, I think it would be great to have you on a curriculum team. And I separated those out. And then I met with this other group and we just designed the curriculum. The student team, it's really important for students to have a voice. I happen to be the student council sponsor during this, so I definitely double dipped with my student council team and asked them for a lot of guidance. I also created a separate student team, and that lasted, we're in our 7th year of advisory now. I kept the student leadership team for the first 3 years, and then I moved to having just student council as the student team for advisory for the second 3 years. 7th year, again, like I said before, we're constantly revamping. We're going back to a separate student team. We had students who wanted a voice that weren't on student council. We took a solid year for some community outreach and marketing of advisory to explore other programs and to design. So this could be a really good year for people to reach out, not necessarily do the visits, but reach out to other schools, design the program, and get your talking points in line for what it is you want to convey to your school community, students, and community members at large for why you're doing this heavy lift, or why you're revamping and what you're revamping. We identified our goals. Our 4 are still relationships, academics, school spirit, and character. We really wanted to up the school spirit at our school. the characters, the community service projects we do through advisory, academics obviously are a big part, and relationships. Our principal sometimes co-presents with me on this, and he says that one of the main reasons we decided to do advisory was because he gave out a survey and he asked all students to say whether or not they had one teacher, or to list the specific one teacher that they felt like they had a strong relationship with in our school. And the wording might be off there. It might have been, do you have a trusted adult in this school? If so, can you please name them? And a third of our students couldn't name an adult, and that didn't sit well with our principal, so he pulled the trigger on advisory and announced in a staff meeting that we were going to have advisory the following year. And I was clapping, and then I realized I was the only one clapping in the meeting, and it felt really awkward. And then I was quickly nominated as the advisory coordinator after that. So careful how excited you get. You might get a big job. But so the relationship part of this came from that. We wanted each student to feel like they had a connection to at least one trusted adult in this school. And we're hoping that advisory is that. The ongoing assessment. So focus groups, walkthroughs, ongoing professional development, and surveys. Working backwards from that, the surveys on the bottom we give to students about what they would like to do, what they would like to see, and what they're liking about advisory, what changes they might like to see about advisory. The professional development occurs almost every year with the whole staff for an hour. Some years we skip it, but I do an orientation for all new hires every year that lasts an hour. It's good to do the whole staff just to remind us why we're doing this, because it is, like Alice has it at Manitou every day. It is a lot of time that these teachers spend with these students, and it can seem very overwhelming. So reminding everybody why we're doing this, and the PD to give them some new games and some new tools, and to discuss the renewed focus for the year and the direction advisory is going, I think is really important to do every year. The advisory coordinator, myself, usually I would recommend does not have an advisory class, because then he or she can walk around and put out fires during the day, do walkthroughs of a class to make sure teachers are following the curriculum as much as possible, and some focus groups we've also had time for with students. We try and get a really good cross-cut of all the different groups, bring them together in a conference room and just ask the same questions and see how they think advisory is going. Before I move on to this and we talk a little bit more about the Pirate Cup, I was going to see if anybody had any questions so far.
I have a question, Stewart. It's Alice. So when you first started this program, did you have pushback from your staff? I'm just thinking, we've tried to implement kind of fun advisory curriculum type programs, and we get pushback because our staff almost sees advisory as a second plan time for themselves, and they just babysit the kids that are in their room. And so how did you approach that?
It's a great question. I go into it in a little more detail in the document I'll be sharing with each of you. But another pushback is I'm not a counselor, right? Don't give me the social emotional stuff to teach, because that's not what my license is in. As our program is developed, we've pulled more and more away from a whole lot of social emotional and advisory for a lot of reasons. Sometimes it doesn't get taught effectively, but also there is so much other stuff that we're finding students need, how to do your taxes, just little itty bitty things that we feel a high school kid should graduate with the knowledge of. To answer your question more directly, the pushback and the main naysayers that were coming forward when we began the heavy lift, after I was the only one in the room who clapped, right? So it wasn't like a super popular decision. I made sure that in that initial leadership team for advisory, that I brought the biggest naysayers I could to the table, along with some of the early adopters, um, Simon Sinek language there. But so I brought the early adopters and I brought some of the naysayers to the table to help steer the ones who were really worried about, I've seen this fall on its face before, this is one more thing I have to plan for. And what we found was that the naysayers kind of after a month or two were like, you know what, looks like you got this. I'm going to not be on this committee anymore. I trust you guys, and let us know what you come up with during the professional development for it. The other thing is that I, as the advisory coordinator, make sure the lesson plans are completely organized to the T and in the teacher's hands through Google Calendar, which I'll show you in a little bit how that works. So they are not planning anything. I have the curriculum outlined for every age group, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, for every day. And you, as a result of attending this, will have the link to get all of those lessons as well. So that has relieved a lot of the extra planning. Yes, they have one more class with students, but it is not outside of their planning time. They don't have to prep for it. So it's not an extra prep because it's done. And if there are any materials that are included, they're very minimal. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, any other questions before we move on to talk about the Pirate Cup a little more? Okay, so the Pirate Cup, like I tried to get your head around the picture of, each grade level has the same number of advisory classes, and each of those classes gets a color. So one color team equals a class of the same color in each grade level. So that picture below is the gray color team. Freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior class, that were the gray color team in 2017. They accumulate points toward the Pirate Cup throughout the year. The principal helps me keep track of the points, and we give points for a whole lot of stuff. Parent-teacher conferences, and here's a secret about Pirate Cup points that the kids don't ever seem to know or care about. You can make up the amounts for whatever you want to make important that year. We decided we wanted college nights and parent-teacher conferences to be really important this year, so we gave each student who came 20 points for attending a college night or attending the parent-teacher night, whereas signing in at a soccer game or a football game, that's just 1 point. How we do that, just for the record, we have a sheet of paper. It's divided into 6 colors, and or 6 parts, and it has gray, white, gold, silver, black, yellow. And as a student walks through to the soccer, track, spring musical, volleyball game, wherever they're coming in through our doors, they put 1 tick mark as they pass the entry. If they want to give it to a different color team, that is their choice. We don't care about that. And then at the end of the game, we compile those papers, and at the end of the quarter, when we tally up the Pirate Cup points for that quarter, we go in and put into the spreadsheet how many points silver team got for all the home events that were attended. That I tell you that because at the beginning we started, everybody sign in with your name and your teacher's name and then we'll double check. And then we had to go see what color team that teacher was on, and we had to do a whole lot of extra work. So now we just do a simple tick sheet, tally sheet, and add those up later. We give points for dressing up on Spirit days because, again, school spirit was one of our 4 pillars, and this has seen an increase in participation and dressing up. If you think it's going to be a slow day, or if you want to give more points, you can have winners for the best costume, and you can give extra cup points for those winners and assign those to the color teams later. Contributions of excellence is a little bit like a positive behavior reward. So we didn't have an opportunity in our school 7 years ago to call out a student and say, good job, way to go for this, without creating a somewhat phony atmosphere in an assembly that felt contrived and maybe like students could laugh at them. This way, we give each student, the teachers get the opportunity through Google Forms to nominate a student who's gone above and beyond without being asked to do whatever it is they did on campus. So we've had students who fixed the blinds in a teacher's classroom, or one student brought in a drill from home because a table was falling apart. So each of those students, if referred by a teacher, gets 20 points. And we usually give them a little ice cream or a popsicle or some pirate swag like yellow and black socks, that kind of thing, baseball cap. And we call them down, and you'll see this in a video I'm going to show you, and give them an award. And a really nice follow-up is calling the parents to let them know the kid got the award. That's one more way to earn points. Store decorations, hallway decorations, anything like that that you want to make sure students participate in. We run a report through Infinite Campus and get the average GPA of each class. The top 3 get points every quarter. We run the same report for attendance. The top 3 classes with the fewest number of unexcused absences get points every quarter. And then we have some good old-fashioned friendly competitions. We have human tic-tac-toe, kickball, capture the flag, family feud, volleyball. We let each class develop their own rules for that. Do you have to play? Do you not have to play? If you don't play, maybe you have to cheer. So participants in extracurriculars, we also give points for through a Google form. We ask the teacher, please record how many students in your class participated in an extracurricular activity. They mark that. You only get 1 point. If you're a 3-sport athlete, you still only get 1 point. And then we multiply that times, I think it's 15 points per kid for an extracurricular activity like soccer, football, volleyball, etc. And then anything else you want to emphasize. That's the great thing about Pirate Cup points. Whatever you want to make important at your school, find a way to make it worth some points. I've had people come in for toy drives or canned food drives or a veterans talk or something like that. Those we're able to do points for all of those. Last year this April was supposed to be the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. We had someone come in and we did eco challenges in every classroom. We gave points for that. So whatever it is you want. So here's a little video. Hopefully it works. And you guys can get a little bit better idea of what it is in action.
When I started with the district, I came to Pagosa Springs High School, and you can walk into a building and you can feel the culture and you can feel the climate. And kids were just kind of there.
I created a list of all the students in the school and handed it to the teachers and had them return it to me and put a check mark next to the kids that they felt like they had a relationship with. And found out that we had about a third of our student body that didn't have a check mark next to their name, and realized we needed to do something different.
We needed to do something to engage kids in learning and to change the culture in the school and to change the climate in the school.
Of the changes that we've made at the high school, advisory is probably the thing that's going to have the biggest effect on our students.
We want
wanted every student in this school to have a meaningful relationship with an adult. So if you start out in a freshman advisory with Mr. Shaw, you're always in Mr. Shaw's advisory all the way through high school.
By making that a 4-year process, that student develops a relationship with that teacher they know they can go talk to.
I go to students to just kind of find out what's going on in their classrooms. Is there anything I can help them with? We talked about financial aid. We talked about scholarships. We worked on scholarships. And that's what really got me into thinking I'm going to college next year. We've made it a priority to include team building.
No one can touch the ground. If someone falls off, you have to start over, okay?
We would play games to get to know each other at the beginning. We would really open up to each other.
There's some people in there that you're like, that you've never hung out with. And then next thing you know, you become pretty much best friends because we participate as one.
We had intramural sports, which not only increased school spirit, but it also increased student investment. And it is amazing what some competition will do for these kids. Today is the Pirates Cup, which is part of the advisory. Whichever advisory won the most points gets the Pirate Cup. Each of our advisory classes is assigned to a color. They have a freshman, a sophomore, a junior, and a senior in each color team.
By doing the vertical color teams, freshmen now had a connection to seniors in the building. So the points then are generated by a number of activities. The activities are intentional as culture changers.
They get points all year long for the intramural competitions they do. They get points for GPA and attendance. Another series of points that went towards the Pirate Cup are called the Contributions of Excellence. Every teacher had an opportunity to nominate any student they saw throughout the year for going above and beyond the typical duties of a student.
Yellow Squad's from the Power Cup, baby. Great took second, we took third. It's just a great day to be here, have fun. Great year to have advisories. So far, advisory has brought in an increase in audience at our games. Got to hang out with friends, my teacher, got close to her.
We won. I was overjoyed just to see their hard work pay off and they come together as a group. That was the key.
I think advisory is great, and I think it's really worth putting some time into.
As a result of advisory, our school has become a place where we can involve the whole community. Even our custodian staff has gotten involved by buying remote control cars for a special talent class.
On your mark, get set, go!
We have an environment now where no matter what it is the student needs, we look for a way to make that happen.
We're at the tip of the iceberg of what this program can do for us, and I still believe with all my heart, if we affect the way kids feel about school and the way they feel like they belong when they come to school, this is the number one thing that can have the biggest effect on the experience for kids in high school.
Okay, so that was made by the Colorado Education Initiative, and Vanessa Farrell does some really good work with them. If we're in a spot next year and you feel like you're preloaded and you've done a lot of good work this school year, and the fall of 2021 comes around and it's looking like you're going to do this heavy lift and go for an advisory program, I would recommend reaching out to the Colorado Education Initiative and possibly having Vanessa Farrell. This information is detailed in the handout that I'll give you access to. She's great at tying the importance of social, or the heart-mind connection is what she calls it. And she says if students aren't engaged and don't believe in that they can pass and they don't have a solid relationship with a teacher in a school, they're a lot more likely to drop out. And tying that to the need for advisory is just one more step down the same path. So that was a lot. Are there any other questions?
Stewart,
Yeah.
one question I have is how do you keep this from not becoming a catch-all time for kids to do every other thing in the building? You know, counselors need them, you know, presentations by other group, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, and good luck with that, because it really is going to be a catch-all time, and that's part of its purpose. This is where the seniors vote for their class speaker. This is where they vote for the song. This is where their caps and gowns are handed out. But it's also where they take the time to work on scholarships, which they really don't have that time with teachers as guides to navigate all those difficult scholarships, sometimes for a first generation in a family. So it really is a catch-all, but the way we guard it is people come out of the woodwork, right? Like, oh, there's this program and I heard it's easy, and if I just talked to Stewart, I heard I can get in. That's where I guard it. I don't just let any old community member come in and discuss anything. I try and keep the gates pretty tight as far as guest speakers, and I weigh those against the good of the school or the good of one grade level versus the importance of keeping this to those 4 different categories, right? So the 4 pillars that we decided as our school. And none of those pillars, if you think about it, were social emotional. So a lot of people go into advisory, and the advisory canned curriculums that I found were all so heavy social emotional. And I'm a therapist, I'm a counselor. I totally think that we should get our kids as much social emotional development as humanly possible. I just don't know if advisory is the place to do all of that. It didn't feel like it was for our school. Our teachers weren't all on board with it. The yellow teacher who won the Pirate Cup and was so excited was one of the biggest naysayers out of the gate. That was at the end of year 1, that video. And she loved it once she got into it. But I would never ask anyone to be a counselor. It's actually dangerous to ask teachers to be a counselor. So believe me, is one of the talking points. Believe me, I will not want you to be a counselor when we set this up. So then working backwards, beginning with your end in mind, what are your pillars? And then working backwards and having someone in charge of being that gatekeeper and comparing all of these things to those pillars and what are the pros and cons, and weighing out the validity of each request that comes their way. But it is, to a certain degree, a catch-all because we did not have a time in our school day for announcements, for getting together to discuss the SAT and what that looks like, and registering for the SAT or ACT. And so it does provide a time in school to talk about things that aren't just the curriculum options from our teachers. So it is a catch-all, and it's a good question. I'm not sure I even answered it, but that's our approach for our building. Does that make sense, Rashawn?
absolutely. Got it.
Okay. Anything else? So this is how you access our lessons. You can go to the high school website under the tab Academics, Advisory, and then Resources, or this is just the link. It's kind of cut off, but that E is the end. It's not plural, I don't think. I'll make sure you each get this in an email that I send to you, the attendees. I know Justin was going to hop off and get on a phone call with Rhonda, the CHASA director. So Justin, are you on here right now? Or Whitney or Ryan?
I'm on here, Stewart.
Hey, is that Whitney?
Yes, sorry.
Is there a way to get these guys' email addresses?
I'll just make sure I have everyone noted.
Okay. We could also ask them to put it in the chat when they have a second. And if you could capture that, I could send them an email with this slide. This is the important one. And then I'll attach an electronic copy of the guide I keep referencing.
Yeah.
So that's how you get it, but I'll get that information to you. And this is what works for us. Nuts and bolts versus the content. This might answer your question a little bit more, Rashawn, when we talk about the content. So nuts and bolts. So far, we have changed up something pretty dramatically every single year that we have done advisory. Either the schedule has changed or the academic advising days. We started off with, no, this is not a study hall. Absolutely not. And then the kids were just begging for it. So the second year we said, okay, we'll give them 1 day of academic advising. And then we came back and we gave them 2. And we've set at 2 academic advisings now for 3 years, I think. We work on a block schedule. We have advisory Monday through Thursday for 45 minutes. We have an early release on Fridays. We do not have advisory on Fridays. I think 20 minutes, let me take that back. I think 25 minutes twice a week is a minimum. I think anything else isn't an advisory. So 25 minutes twice a week. You need close to an hour a week for advisory. I think to be anything more than just like, let's come together and sit for a second and then get out of here. To take it to that next level and start to gel as a group and develop some cohesion and to then get some curriculum in, you're going to need at least an hour a week or close to it. Like I said, we have it 2 days a week for academic advising. So on Tuesdays and Thursdays, students are allowed to work on homework. We're really intentional with the lesson plan for that, though. Teachers are not supposed to be at their desk unless a student is with them. During academic advising days, a teacher is to go through their list and check the grades of every single student in their class, and it usually takes 2 days, one of the reasons we developed the second day, to make sure they've had a conversation with any student who is struggling in any class on campus. Sometimes that teacher will help the student craft an email to a teacher saying, I know I'm missing this assignment, when can I retake it? During this time, 1 day a week, on the Thursdays, students are allowed to move back and forth between classes to get help. And on Tuesdays, you are not supposed to move between classes. You're supposed to stay in your advising classroom, work on your academics, and speak with your teacher about your grades. On Thursdays, you can switch. Both days of the week, we have a testing center, so students can come and take a retake test at a testing center, and I'll talk a little bit more about that under the content tab. We have advisory as a pass-fail class. Each class determines what it means to be counted as present. It can be attendance, it can be participation, and that class you're allowed 2 non-participatory grades per quarter, or you fail. So you fail that quarter. If you fail that quarter, you have to do payback hours to make up for the lost time. The assistant principal is on board with this program and helps me by keeping track of all payback hours and making sure students pass the class. You can't graduate from our school if you're failing advisory. As far as virtual, we said that every student who checks in with their advisor via email, phone, text, Zoom, Google Meet, whatever, once a week will pass advisory for this year. So when we went to virtual, we loosened the reins on that for a lot of obvious reasons. and allowed students to make up their grades just by remaining in contact with their teachers. What works for us also is Google. Google is our site guide, so all of our staff emails are through Gmail, and Google Calendar, Google Forms are the forms that I've been talking about that we use. So we're really heavy on Google. I joke a lot of times and say becoming an advisory coordinator gave me a doctorate in Google, but there's still a lot that I don't know. It's been a really helpful tool. For example, the Google Calendar. It's how we get the lesson plans to each teacher. This is for a random February month last year, I think. So I create 5 Google Calendars. Hopefully, as student council advisor, you would maybe not have this as a dual role, or you would have a team supporting you. I just happened to land in both positions simultaneously. So I developed 5 calendars. The red calendar that's circled on the 8th, that's a common advisory calendar. So on common days, every grade level is doing the same thing. So on Wednesdays, everybody was doing the same thing. And then on the 7th, everyone was doing financial literacy except for that green group who I know to be the juniors. They had to go to the auditorium to receive an announcement. And then on the 14th, right below that, everyone did a Valentine's Day lesson. They had to write or call or create a thank you, or it was a lesson around gratefulness to express their gratitude to someone outside of themselves. And everyone made a quote unquote Valentine for someone to just express their gratitude. So that was what most of the school did, except for the junior girls had a talk on body image that I've been allowing a group to come in and give every year. We had a Pirate Cup assembly on the 21st for the whole school. And then up on the 9th and the 16th, we had grade level advisories. We had human tic-tac-toe, one of our intramural competitions. The junior boys had a guest speaker. The seniors were working on scholarship times or vocational trade school research. And then the sophomores had a lesson about attitude is altitude, a guy born with no legs and no arms, and his attitude and how he navigates life. So when we do things like that, just a side note, the attitude is altitude, it might be like a TED Talk or a video, and then the students are supposed to lead the discussion afterwards with a few questions. So kind of like a critical thinking exercise. So that's how Google Calendar works for us. Any questions on that? To clarify a little, a teacher can see the common advisory calendar, and they can choose to see the freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior. Most of them hide all calendars aside from the grade level they are teaching and the common. So it wouldn't look quite as cluttered up here if you were a freshman. You would only see the tic-tac-toes and the commons. You wouldn't see everything else. So that's how we get the lesson plans to everybody. If you click on these, just like a Google event, Google Calendar event, you can attach the materials if there are any needed or handouts. I try and stay away from anything that needs to be printed and keep it as digital as possible so that teachers can project and use video rather than having to run to the copier. I'm going to skip this. The video is bad. It was taken by a graduate speaker's sister, and she's pretty young, but it's one of our seniors 2 years ago who graduated all 4 years with advisory, and they selected their class speaker as the 6 advisory teachers of their grade level. And her introduction talks about we got together to try and decide how to describe who these people are to us. And we came up with mentors, and we came up with friends. But one thing we kept circling back to was family. And advisory is a lot like a family. You might not really enjoy spending time with everybody that you're stuck with for all 4 years, but you figure out how to make it work, and you form bonds with even the people that you knew nothing about and have nothing in common with, much like a family would. And I put it in because it was a good summary of what our intent was. So to see that come to fruition 4 years later, a few years ago, was really powerful. And since then, they've selected the advisory teachers as their speakers each year, and the introduction has gone similarly each year. And with that, I think I can exit out of here and see your beautiful faces again and see if you have any questions. That just about wraps it up. So what questions? Are you overwhelmed? Was that a lot? Okay, good. Well, I really appreciate you all coming. I'm going to follow up with an email, and I'm happy to answer any questions moving on. A lot of times we give tours. That's probably not going to be an option this year, unfortunately. But moving forward, if any of you would like to come see Pagosa Springs High School and see this in action, we would love to have you.
Okay, thanks, Stewart. Yeah, obviously, no questions. You had great information and, covered all your bases. Thank you all for joining today. I'm Whitney, in case none of you have seen me around. Thanks for joining us again today. We have our next webinar is going to be Monday, July 20th, and it's going to be at 1 p.m. with Rashawn. He told me his new subject is going to be Packing Your Leadership Advisor Toolbox. So we'll be getting that sent out this week. Rashawn is on here, so we're just going to have him speak a little bit to what he's going to be talking about next Monday.
Hey, thanks, Whitney.
Yeah.
Stewart, nice job. Mind is just on fire. A lot of stuff and all good for sure. Hopefully next week will be an opportunity for me to just kind of give people some of the things that I've learned over the last 3 months. One thing I know is that it seems like every day I've been in a Zoom meeting or on a webinar or just picking up information. And I've realized that the only thing I can really control is how I go back to school at this point and be ready for whatever they throw at us. And so with that, I've just attended as much as I possibly could in order to pick up some information and how-tos on student engagement, spirit, belonging, maintaining culture and all that good stuff. And so I want to share that with everybody in a number of ways. So I know we were talking school spirit before, but I thought, man, let me switch this up and just give you some of the things that I've found helpful along the way. So specifically, there's some advisor self-care things, some school spirit questions, some virtual energizers, and some books to read, of course. So a lot of things that I hope to just share with you, and then have the conversation with you about some of the things that maybe you've picked up over this time. So that's next week. Bring a friend, the more the merrier.
Yes, the more the merrier, for sure. And then obviously Wednesday, big day coming up, our virtual summer conference. So we've got over 100 students registered, about 30 advisors registered. So I think it's going to be some great collaboration, a lot of discussion between the students and the advisors. So today's the last day for registration. So if you have any more students, you can still get them added. I'll be watching that, and we'll be sending out the Zoom links tomorrow to everyone that's registered. But with that, I think we'll conclude this webinar. So thank you all for joining. Have a good day.